My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I died. At least that's what everyone thought. My husband, his family, even the doctors, who shook their heads at the wreckage, they all believed I was gone forever. And in some ways, I was, because the woman I was before the crash, the obedient wife, the quiet daughter-in-law, the invisible shadow in a family that never wanted me, she did die. And what came back was someone else entirely. But let me start at the beginning. When I first married Adrian, I thought I had found my fairy tale. He was handsome, successful, charming in the way men are when they want to win. He swept me off my feet, told me I was special, and promised me a life of stability and love. For a while, I believed him. The problem wasn't Adrian. It was his family. From the moment I stepped into his parents' grand estate, I knew I wasn't welcome. His mother, Victoria, looked me up and down with eyes that sliced me apart in silence. She made polite remarks at dinner, but every word dripped with poison. "Oh, Eleanor, such a simple dress," she would say with a smile. "You're not used to our kind of gatherings yet, are you?" His father was colder, more distant, but it was Victoria who made sure I knew I was never good enough for her son. Still, Adrian defended me, at least at first. He would take my hand under the table, squeeze it, and whisper later, "Ignore her. She'll come around." But she never did. Then came the inheritance. It wasn't from Adrian's family. It wasn't from anyone connected to them at all. It was from my late uncle, an eccentric man who had always told me stories of his investments and adventures. When he passed, his estate lawyer reached out. I had inherited $8 million. For the first time in my life, I had power, my own money, my own future. At first, Adrian was thrilled. "This changes everything," he said, pulling me into his arms. "We can build our dream life. We don't have to rely on my parents anymore." But I saw the look in Victoria's eyes when she found out. Greed, envy, a cold, simmering rage that her son's wife, not her son, was the one with the fortune. Everything changed after that. Adrian became distant, colder. He started staying late at the office, answering calls in hushed tones. My mother-in-law began inviting me to fewer dinners. And when I did attend, she made sure to remind me how fragile life could be, how accidents happen when people get careless. I thought they were just words. Cruel words, yes, but nothing more. Then came the crash. It was supposed to be a simple trip. I was driving home from a charity event, my car filled with flowers from the centerpiece I had been given. The night was clear, the roads familiar, and then headlights, a blinding flash. A sound like the world splitting in two. When I woke, I was in a hospital. Broken bones, fractured ribs, stitches running across my face. But alive. The nurses told me I was lucky, that no one expected me to survive, that my car had been mangled beyond recognition. And then, one nurse leaned close, her voice low. "Your husband," she whispered. "He signed the paperwork. He told us not to resuscitate if you crashed again." I didn't understand at first. My husband, the man I trusted, the man who held me through storms, had signed a do not resuscitate order behind my back. And worse, when they called Victoria, neither of them came. Days passed, no flowers, no visits, no calls. It was as if I had already been buried. And then I overheard the doctors. "The family has declared her legally deceased," one said. "The husband already signed the paperwork for her estate transfer." My blood went cold. I had survived. I was lying in that bed, alive, breathing, fighting, and my husband, my own husband, had already erased me. The inheritance, my money, was being transferred. To him. To them. That's when something inside me snapped. I realized the truth. The crash wasn't an accident. It had been arranged, planned. Because with me gone, the money was theirs. They thought they had won. They thought I was too weak to fight back, but they were wrong, because I wasn't dead. And when I returned, when I walked back into their lives with the money they thought was theirs, the look on Victoria's face, the way she screamed, the way her knees buckled and her hands clawed at the air, that was the beginning of my revenge. I stayed in the hospital for weeks, hidden in plain sight. The doctors told me not to move, not to stress myself, that my recovery would take months. But they didn't know what kept me alive wasn't their machines. It was rage. Every beep of the monitors was a drumbeat reminding me my husband had signed me away. My mother-in-law had likely orchestrated the crash. My family-in-law had already written me out of existence. And if I wanted to survive, not just physically, but truly survive, I had to play dead a little longer. So that's what I did. The nurse who had whispered the truth to me, her name was Marissa. She became my first ally. She smuggled me newspapers, where I read the announcement of my own memorial service. Adrian stood at the podium, dressed in black, a mask of grief. Beside him, Victoria dabbed fake tears from her eyes with a silk handkerchief. I nearly tore the paper in half. They killed me, I whispered, my voice shaking with fury. Marissa squeezed my hand. Then make sure they regret it. When I was stable enough, Marissa helped arrange a transfer to a private facility 2 towns over. No records in my name, no visitors allowed. As far as the world knew, Elena Whitaker was gone. But I was still here. I started with small steps. Physical therapy was brutal. My ribs screamed every time I took a breath. My legs felt like lead when I tried to stand. But every time I wanted to give up, I pictured Adrian signing those papers. I pictured Victoria raising her glass of champagne at the funeral reception, celebrating my absence. And I pushed harder. Months passed. My body healed. The scars remained, but I began to see them as proof, not of weakness, but of survival. When I was finally able to walk without assistance, I asked Marissa for a laptop. I need to check something, I told her. What I found nearly knocked the breath out of me again. Adrian had wasted no time. The $8 million inheritance had already been transferred into his accounts. Some of it had been invested. Some funneled into Victoria's projects, luxury cars, a new vacation property, jewelry. It was as if they couldn't wait to burn through money that wasn't theirs. But here's the thing they didn't realize. My uncle's estate lawyer had set up safeguards. The money was tied to my social security number. Transfers had to be justified. If proof of my survival ever surfaced, everything they had taken would legally snap back to me. The power was still mine. It just needed the right moment. But I couldn't walk into their mansion the next morning and demand my life back. They would bury me for real this time. So I built a new life first. Marissa introduced me to her cousin, an IT specialist who knew how to cover tracks. He helped me set up new accounts, new protections. I withdrew small amounts of money from side trusts my uncle had left me, funds Adrian didn't even know existed, enough to rent a small apartment under a different name, enough to start over without raising alarms. I cut my hair short, dyed it darker. For months, I lived quietly, going out only when necessary. To the world, I was a widow in a different city, but inside, I was sharpening my knives. I couldn't resist keeping tabs on Adrian and Victoria. Social media was their weakness. Amelia, my sister-in-law, posted photos constantly. Lavish dinners, vacations. Adrian grinning with his arm around her new designer bag. One night, I scrolled through her feed until my hands trembled. There it was, Adrian standing beside another woman. Young, beautiful, his hand resting possessively on her back. The caption read, "So happy for my brother finding love again." My stomach dropped. He had remarried. I shouldn't have been surprised. He'd buried me quickly enough. Why wouldn't he replace me just as fast? But seeing him smiling like that, as if I had never existed, lit a fire in me that words can't describe. That's when my plan shifted. It wasn't just about reclaiming the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my power. It was about showing all of them, the cold husband, the cruel mother-in-law, the shallow family, that the woman they erased was stronger than all of them combined. I couldn't do it alone. So I reached out to the one person I knew hated Victoria almost as much as I did, my uncle's old friend Richard. He had been cut out of family events years ago, after a business deal with Adrian went sour. When he saw me alive, he nearly fainted. "Elena," he whispered, gripping my shoulders. "They said you were gone." "Do I look gone to you?" I asked, my voice cold. He stared at my scars, then nodded. "What do you want me to do?" "Help me take back what's mine," I said. Richard smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. "Gladly." The chance came faster than I expected. Victoria was hosting a gala at her estate, a fundraiser, the kind where cameras flashed and reporters circled like vultures. I knew it was perfect. That would be the night I returned, the night I showed the world that Eleanor Whitaker wasn't dead. And when Victoria saw me, when Adrian saw me, alive, breathing, walking into their perfect little party, their entire empire would crumble in front of everyone, had lived in the shadows long. Enough. It was time to step into the light. The night of the gala arrived like thunder. I stood across the street from the estate I once called home, hidden in the shadows, staring at the glittering lights spilling out of the windows. Cars lined the driveway, women in gowns and men in tuxedos, filing past the grand entrance with champagne laughter. Every inch of me trembled, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was rage sharpened into steel. I waited until the speeches had started, until the press had their cameras raised, until Victoria was basking in the spotlight she craved more than air. Then I walked forward. My heels clicked on the marble floor as I entered, the sound echoing like a drumbeat. People turned, murmurs started, faces that should have forgotten me widened in disbelief. And then Adrian saw me. His wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. I kept walking, never breaking eye contact. His face turned pale, his jaw dropped, and beside him, his new wife clutched his arm like she had seen a ghost. Maybe she thought she had. I stopped in the center of the hall, every camera turning toward me. "Good evening," I said, my voice steady, though my heart hammered in my chest. "I hope I'm not late." The room fell into silence so deep, I could hear the clink of ice in someone's drink. Victoria staggered forward, her hand trembling on the back of a chair. For once, her perfect mask cracked, her lips parted, her breath came in short gasps, and then the scream tore out of her throat. It wasn't theatrical. It was raw, horrified, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. The woman who had always looked down at me now looked as if she was staring into hell itself. "Impossible," she whispered. "You're dead," I smiled, and for the first time in years, I meant it. "Clearly not." Adrian stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Elena, how is this possible?" "Surprise," I said. "Your crash didn't kill me. Neither did your signatures. Neither did your greed." The cameras were flashing now, reporters scribbling notes like mad. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was news. A scandal being written in real time. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid it on the table in front of me. "You declared me dead. You signed papers to take my inheritance. But as you can see, I'm very much alive. And now every cent, every house, every car you bought with my money will be investigated." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adrian's new wife looked like she might faint. Victoria swayed, her face chalk white, clutching her pearls like they could protect her. "You set me aside," I said, louder now so the room could hear. "You erased me, but you forgot one very important thing. The dead can't fight back, and I am alive." A ripple of applause started in the back, hesitant at first, then stronger. People were clapping, not because they loved me, but because they loved a spectacle. And I was fine with that. The spectacle was my weapon. Adrian lunged toward me, his face twisted with desperation. "You can't do this. You don't know what you're saying." I stepped back, calm and cold. "I know exactly what I'm saying. You tried to bury me, Adrian, but you forgot I'm not soil. I don't rot. I rise." The cameras caught every word. The reporters wrote every sentence. Victoria's screams still echoed in the chandeliered hall, the sound of a dynasty crumbling. And in that moment, I knew I had won. The night of the gala ended in chaos. Reporters swarmed, microphones shoved in Adrian's face, flashes blinding Victoria as she trembled in the corner. Guests whispered. Some fled. Some stayed to watch the downfall, like vultures circling. I didn't need to raise my voice again. The truth was already louder than anything I could scream. I walked out of that mansion with my head high. The sound of Victoria's ragged breathing and Adrian's desperate protests chasing me like a song of defeat. By morning, the news had spread across every outlet. "Widow returns from dead after crash" was plastered on every headline. Photos of me at the gala, scarred but unbroken, were on every screen. Analysts speculated about the inheritance, the legal fallout, the betrayal. And the best part? None of it came from my mouth. I didn't need to tell my story. The world was telling it for me. Adrian tried to call me. Over and over. I let the phone buzz until it fell silent. He left voicemails, his voice trembling, swinging between anger and pleading. "We can fix this. We can explain. Elena, please." Each message made me colder. I deleted them one by one, each tone a nail in the coffin of the marriage that had already been dead, long before the crash. Victoria didn't call. She sent a letter, delivered by courier, sealed with her perfect handwriting. Inside, a single page. "You've ruined us. You'll regret this." I laughed when I read it. She still thought her words could scare me. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into a drawer, and smiled. It was a trophy now. The courts moved faster than I expected. With proof of my survival, the inheritance was restored. Every asset Adrian had taken with my money was seized, frozen, or transferred back. The house, the cars, the jewelry Victoria flaunted at her luncheons. It was all mine again. Watching her stripped of her trophies was sweeter than any revenge I had imagined. But I didn't keep them. Not all of them. I sold the house they had loved so much, the one with the marble floors that echoed my invisibility. I donated a portion to a foundation for victims of domestic betrayal. Women like me, who had been written off, erased, or abandoned. The rest I invested carefully, in my name, protected this time, untouchable. When Adrian finally showed his face, it was in court. His lawyer tried to argue that he had acted in good faith, that he had believed I was gone, that he had only managed the money for the family's sake. But the evidence was a knife he couldn't dull. He had declared me dead within days, signed papers with eagerness, drained accounts with no hesitation. The judge's words still ring in my ears. This is not the behavior of a grieving husband. This is exploitation. Victoria sat in the back of the courtroom that day, her posture stiff, her eyes hollow. When the ruling came down in my favor, she didn't scream this time. She just sagged against the bench, her face gray, her power crumbling like dust in her hands. For once she looked small. Adrian's new wife vanished. Some said she left him the moment the money dried up. I like to think she screamed one last time when she realized the man she had clung to was nothing without the wealth he had stolen. As for me, I didn't gloat, not in public, but behind closed doors. I celebrated quietly. Every scar on my body became a reminder that I had survived not just the crash, but the life they tried to bury me in. The day I returned to my uncle's grave, I brought fresh flowers and the key to the estate he had left me. I knelt in the grass and whispered, They tried to erase me, but I made sure they'll never forget me again. Thank you for giving me the chance to rise. When I left, I didn't look back. People often ask if revenge satisfied me. The answer is yes, but not in the way they expect. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the court ruling. It wasn't even Victoria's scream, though I'll treasure that sound until my last breath. What satisfied me was the silence that followed. The silence where once I had begged to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. Now, I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I had my own power, my own name, my own life. The woman they buried was gone forever, and the woman who stood in her place had everything they feared: strength, freedom, and the will to burn down the cage they built around her. So when my mother-in-law nearly collapsed at the sight of me alive, she wasn't wrong. She wasn't just seeing me. She was seeing the ghost of the woman they killed and the fire of the woman who came back to destroy them. And that's how I survived. Not just the crash, but them.